Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
Emily Voight of Appleton is a Democrat running in the 3rd Assembly District. The election is November 3. Emily, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you, Steve, for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I know you're a member of the county board, so we could start with local issues. But first of all, just give me, what do you think is your top campaign issue, please, Emily?
Healthcare is my biggest issue, and it's a personal issue for me as well.
Okay, and if you're elected, what changes would you push for in healthcare just generally?
Well, I believe we need to accept the Medicaid Expansion Act.
Okay.
Many states around the country, including Republican-controlled states, have accepted this money, and it's been a game changer for a lot of people that receive Medicaid.
Okay, thanks very much. Let's talk about a few pandemic issues. Some state Senate Republicans would like to repeal the governor's mask edict, statewide mask edict. Do you have a position on that, please?
Yes, I do. I do not believe that we should repeal it. I think it's a waste of time. I have a background in education. While not a science background, I still believe in science. And the CDC has said that wearing masks can help reduce the spread of COVID, especially within enclosed spaces. And I tend to listen to scientists. They know more than the average person. And this is something we haven't seen in 100 years, a pandemic like this. And if you look at some of the pictures, even from back then, because I'm a real history buff, I love my history, and you see people working within the nursing community, and they were wearing masks. And our doctors wear masks, our nurses wear masks when they deal with patients on a regular basis, even when we're not talking about a pandemic. So I don't see why we should be repealing this mandate.
Well, hospitals have been on the front line in Wisconsin and nationally in treating COVID-19 patients. If you're elected voting on the next state budget, should hospitals get even greater priority than they may be getting in the current budget? Excuse me.
Well, I think when we get to the next budget, it will help to know what's going on. And I really hope that we come to a vaccine, a cure for COVID before we get to the next budget. But if when we get to the next budget, it's still a big issue like it is currently, then yes, I think we need to prioritize the needs of our hospitals, specifically rural hospitals. They are being hurt the most right now.
Thank you. State Senator Chris Cappinger yesterday introduced a bill. It says if you're a business or an organization and you have complied with CDC guidelines on COVID for your customers and your employees, you couldn't be sued. Do we need a state law like that?
Well, legislative branch is separate from the judicial branch. I think sometimes people like to think legislators have control over all these issues, and I don't always necessarily feel that we should be controlling everything. I will say from personal experience, I'm not seeing a lot of compliance with the mask mandate. So it's hard to say, because if a business truly is following the mandate, if their employees are all wearing masks and they're not allowing anyone into the store without a mask, I wouldn't think that they would be qualified to be sued for a frivolous lawsuit like that. So I really think people need to make sure they're following these orders, and we let judges and juries make the decisions about whether a lawsuit is frivolous or not.
Okay, new subject. The governor called the legislature into what he hoped was a special session on his 9-bill package of policing reforms. It would, among other things, ban no-knock warrants, no chokeholds, universal standards for training the next generation of police officers. Do you support the governor's package?
I do. I think training and education is key in any job. Police are professionals, much like teachers, and we've put a lot of responsibility on the police to handle much of society's problems. And if they're not properly trained and equipped to handle them, they should be. So I think we need to give more resources to our police to be able to handle situations that are currently going on.
Thanks, Emily. A state report said that in the budget year that ended June 30, we were able to get 1% more tax collections, but everybody's worried about the current budget year tax collections because of COVID, obviously. Right. If we're a billion and a half short, do we raise taxes and fees or cut spending?
Well, I know a lot of people like to make this an either or question, and no offense, I don't think it's just one or the other. I think we really need to look at our budget as a whole. A budget is a set of values with dollars signs attached to it. And what I said right in the beginning about Medicaid expansion, that's one way we can increase funding in our state if we were to take the Medicaid expansion dollars that the federal government offered to us. To the tune of about $1.1 billion we are leaving on the table from the federal government. If we would have done that in the first place, maybe we wouldn't be having some of these issues we have today. I also think looking at different ways that we are spending, some things probably could be cut, but I don't want to ever cut education or social service programs for others. And raising taxes right now, I don't necessarily feel is the best idea either, because lots of people are hurting and they're not able to make ends meet. And even when we try to tax the extremely wealthy that should be paying their fair share in taxes, they tend to find loopholes to get around this, and then the buck gets passed to the middle class. And I don't think the middle class can handle any more in taxes. So there's a lot that needs to be assessed and looked at. And when elected, I will definitely do everything that I can to try to make sure that we have a balanced budget that works for everyone in our state.
More and more of our neighboring states are legalizing both medical and recreational marijuana. What's your position on those?
Actually, I was going to talk about that. So you got me to jump the gun on this. I am definitely in favor of following a plan much like Colorado's plan, because they do education with it. They use the funds to help a number of things that the state is lacking. And then they also work on treatment for people that use other substances that should not be legalized. But I do agree that marijuana should be legalized. It should be ages 21 and up, much like alcohol and cigarettes. It should not be for children at all. And we can use the tax revenue to actually make some of those problems with the budget maybe go away.
The question in the Capitol over who should draw the next congressional and legislative district lines, Constitution said the party in power shall. The governor has suggested a People's Maps Commission draw them and then forward them to lawmakers. Do you agree with the governor's position?
I do, and I did take the Fair Maps Coalition pledge. Over 70% of Wisconsinites believe that our maps need to be fair. And we know that, unfortunately, this is something Wisconsin tends to make the news about a lot, is our gerrymandered maps. I am in a very gerrymandered district to the point where I'm going to really need to look at the street map. Am I in my district or am I not? Because there are certain pockets of Kaukauna that are in my district that probably shouldn't be. So I think we need fair maps and to have a nonpartisan coalition draw up these maps and then have the legislative body vote on them is a good compromise.
Last year, the governor recommended raising our gas tax 30.9 cents per gallon to stabilize highway funding. Could you vote to raise the gas tax?
I could, if as long as all of those dollars are going specifically to the highways. It's not something we're going to dip into when we're in trouble in other areas with our budget. I really do feel it is a way to have our neighbors like Illinois and Minnesota and Michigan, which you see a lot of their cars on the road right here in Northeast Wisconsin driving, and they could help fund some of those repairs. If we're going to be taking their dollars for all sorts of things within the tourist community, it would also help if they would pay some of the share for the roads that they use as well.
Wisconsin is a high property tax state. That's why for more than 20 years, school districts, local governments have had to deal with caps, limits on what they can levy in property taxes. If you're elected voting on the next state budget, would you vote to continue those caps and limits on local property tax levies?
Well, I feel like local governments need to have more control over local issues. As someone who's on the Calumet County Board, we vote in favor of what kind of taxes, sales tax, et cetera, that we're going to levy to our constituents. And I think that the cities and school boards know best about their community, and they should be the ones to make those decisions.
Well, do you think local governments need more revenue options to lessen their reliance on the property tax? I mean, Milwaukee wants to levy on its own a half-cent sales tax. There's a plan in the Capitol by Representative Mako that, he's floated the idea of extending our 5% sales tax to some now exempt products and services and giving that money to local governments. Do local governments need more revenue options?
It could, and I know Calumet County increased their sales tax back in 2017 to 5.5%, and Outagamie just increased this year to 5.5%. So it's definitely worth exploring and looking into different options. But again, I feel local government needs to have control over local issues.
Well, as a county board member, let me ask you this. When a school district or local government plans a major public works project, should they have to give a preference to Wisconsin businesses? In 2015, a study found that out-of-state contractors on public works projects got contracts that totaled $72 million, that more than doubled to $146 million by 2018. Should local governments have to give a preference to Wisconsin businesses?
I don't think they have to, but I think it's good business to do that. We know that when a local business is invested in their community, they actually care about the outcomes of those projects that they endeavor in. And if it's going to affect them, they put more pride in their work, and they're more likely to complete the job and do a good job while doing it.
Then I guess final question, differences between you and your opponent on November 3, please.
Well, I think the biggest difference lies in the fact that I am someone who has always been willing to listen and consider the opinions of everyone. I'm not going to just represent those that look and think like myself. As someone who was raised in a Wisconsin household that's very purple, so I have one parent that's a Republican, one parent that's a Democrat, I can see both sides of the issues, and I'm going to work very hard to represent every person in my district.
Well, do you have a household with one Trump voter and one Biden voter then?
I can't say to that. That would be my parents, and
Okay.
That's their how they vote is their business.
I understand.
In my current household, I am a single parent, and I am voting for Joe Biden.
Okay, I understand. Emily, thank you. Emily Voight of Appleton is a Democratic candidate in the 3rd Assembly District. The election is November 3rd. Emily, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you, Steve.
Have a good day. Stay safe. Thank you.
You too. Take care now.
Thank you.
Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.